So today I'm going to share with you my pre-scene checklist, which are the 4 things that I like to figure out before I start writing a scene. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you already know what a scene is. If you don't know what a scene is, go watch my video explaining what a scene is and then come back here so that I can share with you the checklist. Because in that video I give the big picture overview of what a scene is and how it fits into your story and how you structure a scene, but this video is really just focused on the little 4-part questionnaire that I give myself right at the top of my scenes. So hello and welcome back from watching that other video. As I mentioned in that video, your scene exists to move your story forward. So things don't stay the same from the beginning to the end of your scene. You don't really get scenes in books, or if you do, they're not very interesting scenes, where 2 characters meet up to go get coffee and they're friends and they're happy. They have coffee, they're friends and they're happy, and then they finish their coffee and they go their separate ways, but they're still friends and they're happy, and nothing really happened. They didn't learn any new information. They just had fun and remained friends. Like going to sleep just talking about it. A more interesting scene would be if 2 characters go meet for coffee, halfway through, one of them drops dead, and the other one realizes that there was poison in the coffee. Things changed at the beginning to the end of the scene. At the beginning, the 2 friends were alive and happy and friends, and then at the end, one of them was dead, and then the other one might be suspected of her murder. Every scene has to have something that changes the action. The characters need to discover something needs to happen to the characters, some big thing can be revealed. But the characters at the beginning of the scene should not be the same as the characters at the end of the scene. They should have changed somehow as people, and that change moves your story forward in some way. So that being said, here are the 4 things that I like to figure out before I start writing my scene. I have a little questionnaire that I've put into a Google Doc and linked in the description of this video so that you can copy and paste it under your chapter headings, but that's what I like to do. I literally will write like chapter 1 and then I will copy and paste this little questionnaire under the chapter heading. I will fill it out, and then only after I've done that will I start writing, because it gets me clear on the goals that I have for the scene and what I want to accomplish through it. The first thing that I have on my pre-scene checklist is my big picture goal for the scene. What is the reason I'm writing this scene, and how does it fundamentally change the characters or the action of the story? I need every single one of my scenes to have purpose in my novel. They all have to do something, or else I should not include them. And this is my goal as the author, knowing the big picture of the story. So here I have to isolate specifically why I need this scene in the story, and then what changes. Because if I can't articulate that, the scene probably doesn't belong in the book. The second thing in my checklist is my character's goal for the scene. Every character going through a story has to have a goal and has to want something and be trying to accomplish something. Every main character should have a goal for the entire book. Like if you're writing a romance, their goal maybe is to go date their childhood sweetheart or find love and acceptance. Maybe that's their general big picture goal. But then their goal for a particular scene can be a lot more specific. It can still fit into the big picture goal because the character still needs to get from point A to point B by the end of the book. But in that particular scene, they just have to accomplish a little bite-sized piece of that. So you have to figure out their specific goal for that specific scene. Let's say they go to a holiday party and their childhood sweetheart is there and they really have caught feelings again and they want to reconnect. Their goal for that scene could be to try and get that person alone at the party so they can confess their feelings. It fits into the bigger, broader picture of love and acceptance, but it's not the same as the broader theme. This goal should be something that is able to be accomplished by the end of the scene, so it should be pretty small, and it has to be powerful enough to drive your character through the scene. And it has to be powerful enough and the character has to want it enough for that to propel them through the scene. The third thing on my pre-scene checklist is the obstacle. What is standing in the way of your character getting what they want? If a scene doesn't have an obstacle, it's just not as interesting. A scene where the character wants to get their childhood sweetheart alone at a party to confess their feelings would be a lot more boring if the childhood sweetheart also had feelings and also was just happened to be alone and the perfect song came on at the right moment and was really receptive to their feelings, feels the exact same way, and they live happily ever after. They need to have some sort of obstacle in order to make that interesting and to make the payoff very satisfying for the reader. So in the case of the girl who wants to confess her feelings to her childhood sweetheart, Maybe the obstacle is that that childhood sweetheart is taken, and the girl didn't know that, and she goes to the party all ready to confess her feelings, and then she's about to find the guy alone when the other girl comes in, and she realizes that the other girl is with her childhood sweetheart. They're both super happy together, and the girl is crushed. That is an obstacle to her confessing her feelings, and that adds a lot more dramatic tension to the scene. In that particular example, that is probably not an obstacle that could be overcome in just one scene. A lot of obstacles are overcome in just one scene. Like, let's say in another romantic story, there's a girl who wanted to go confess her love to a boy, and they had just gotten into a big fight, and he was leaving to go to the airport, and she was running after him to the airport to try to catch him before he gets on his flight. And then it looks like, the security line is all jammed up so that she can't get through the security line. And so that is an obstacle. And then she manages to get through, and then she realizes she went to the wrong terminal. So that's another obstacle. So then she goes and she changes the terminal, and then finally she gets to the gate. The guy is still there. She confesses her love. They live happily ever after. But adding obstacles into the scene just makes it more interesting for the readers to be able to go along that journey with the protagonist, because otherwise there is no stakes. You already know everything is going to turn out fine. And the last thing that I like to figure out is my cliffhanger ending. I like to end all of my chapters on some sort of cliffhanger that pushes into the next scene. This is more of a personal preference thing, and it doesn't have to be a crazy cliffhanger. I like to end my chapters on some sort of realization or some sort of discovery that is interesting enough that pushes into the next chapter and makes readers want to just read one more chapter and then put the book down. So I just like to figure out what that is so I know what I'm writing toward. So those are the 4 things that I like to figure out off the top. After I have the answers to all 4 of those questions, I usually do some sort of very brief beat sheet for the chapter. I am admittedly a plotter, so this might not work for you or might not be a helpful approach to you, but I like to understand the general structure of my scene before I start to write it. If you watched my video on scenes, you'll know that I like to think of scenes as having their own miniature story arc within itself, so you have a beginning, middle, and end to every scene, and like an inciting incident and a climax and a resolution / cliffhanger in every scene. So I just like to give that a little bit of structure before I start to write. So let's say I was writing a book about a girl who wants to fix her relationship with her estranged father, and she goes to live with him, and she starts hearing rumors and noticing some strange behavior, and hears that her father is actually like a big criminal / potentially drug lord or something, and she gets roped into his life of crime, and things get really crazy. So one important scene in that book would be the girl realizing that her dad actually is a criminal and having to come to terms with that. So let's say I wanted to do this by, the girl goes out and she sees someone in town, and that person in town tells her, oh yeah, your dad is totally a drug lord. She's like, no, that's such a lie. That's so not true. And then the guy is like, well, actually, no, you should go poke around your house. I'm sure you'd be able to find a lot of drug money hidden in the walls. This book needs some work. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to go back to my house and I'm going to look. So she goes back to the house and she looks and she tears the house apart. She finds the drug money, realizes that her dad's a criminal, and then the scene ends. The big picture goal of the scene, the purpose of that scene, is that the girl has to discover that her dad is a criminal. It fundamentally changes her because at the beginning, she doesn't know that he's a criminal or doesn't believe it, and by the end she believes it. Her goal for the scene is to try and find the money that is hidden in the house. What's standing in the way of her getting what she wants could be her dad coming home and then her having to be a lot sneakier or having to hide from him because she doesn't know if he really is a criminal or doesn't know if she herself is even in danger. And then the cliffhanger ending would be her finding the money. So this is the beat sheet that I would write. So I have the girl goes home and begins searching for the envelopes. She looks in a couple of places, doesn't find it, realizes the envelope could be in the basement somewhere, knows she's not allowed in the basement because her dad doesn't let her go in there. She goes to the basement anyway. Her dad gets home. She freaks out and hides. He looks around, doesn't find her. She recovers, and cliffhanger, finds the envelope. So the last image of the chapter will be her holding these giant envelopes of money, her unspokenly realizing that her dad is a criminal, but the last image is going to be her finding the money, so the next chapter can start with her reactions to that. That is the cliffhanger that pushes into the next chapter. So once I have that, I just start writing the chapter. I'm not outlining from scratch here. I am a big plotter, so I usually plot grid or at least do a thorough sort of outline for my stories before I start to write them. So I already know pretty well what this chapter is going to be before I go into it. I like to think of this process as just me getting organized and getting all of my thoughts in order before putting pen to paper. I'm sure there are writers out there who go way more detailed than me. I'm sure there are writers out there who go way less detailed than me. This is just my personal process, and because writing is so individual and what works for me is not going to work for everybody, my intention with this channel is just to share the things that are working for me in the hopes that you can experiment and try new things and see if those things work for you. So if you're interested in using my little checklist, I have linked the Google Doc in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and it was helpful, I'd be super grateful if you could take a second and like it and also subscribe to my channel. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning author who makes videos on this channel sharing actionable writing tips that helped me make my own writing better. I am the author of the paranormal thriller They Stay series, which is about a teenage girl whose younger brother goes missing, and the only people who know what happened to him are the ghosts in her small town cemetery. So if you're interested in stories like that, you can check out my books in the description. I hope you have a fantastic week, everybody, and as always, happy writing.